Welcome, racing fans, and welcome to the third head-to-head running of the Army-Navy AWS DeepRacer game. This is AWS DeepRacer, the world's first autonomous racing league, and today is that special time where it's Army versus Navy, it's West Point versus Annapolis. We are live here in the shadow of US East 1, just outside of Washington, D.C., and a big shout out to Philadelphia, because there in the parking lot of the Link, we've got the watch party sponsored by the Travis Manion Foundation. Folks, I'm Blaine Sundred with AWS, and with me, as always, is the modern Major General of Motorsports, Ryan Marine.
The very model. That's right, Blaine. Hey, great to be with you. 364 days of the year, the Army and the Navy, they're on the same team. But today is the day of the Army-Navy game that, of course, now for the third year includes a competition with AWS DeepRacer. The two institutions have been playing football nearly every year since 1890. This is a little bit newer, and the overall record is tied. So this is going to be a fantastic matchup, the best of the best from both institutions. And I can't wait to get started.
That's right. Our first running had Navy come out ahead with Deep Blue Sea. The second running, Army comes ahead with the Green Machine from Aberdeen. And today is for bragging rights and the tiebreaker to see which one of them will pull ahead in the third running. Not as many as 1860 and forward, but we're going to keep on going from there. Again, we want to give a huge shout out to our sponsor, the Travis Manion Foundation, and we want to learn a little bit more about them. So we want to hear from Bo Higgins, who actually works directly with the Travis Manion Foundation. Bo, tell us what you got.
Hello, everyone. My name is Matt Webb. I'm Technical Program Manager on the AWS Department of Defense team, and I'm also the co-lead for the AWS DeepRacer Army-Navy competition. With me today is Bo Higgins, Senior Manager for the Amazon Military Affairs team. Bo, thank you very much for joining me this afternoon.
No, awesome. Hey, Matt, great to be here. Really excited about this year's DeepRacer event and to be up at the Army-Navy game and to share a little bit about what Amazon does to support our veterans today.
Absolutely. Would you mind explaining what your role is at Amazon?
Sure. Yeah, I've been here at Amazon for 6 years now. I was 25 years in the Marine Corps prior to that, and since I've been here, my job has been to help Amazon build out their military hiring programs. So I'm not a recruiter per se. I'm a program manager, and I'm basically solely focused on Amazon's veteran and military spouse focused hiring programs. There's a variety of kind of sets of that or sub programs within that, to include owning our Skill Bridge program, which are focused on transitioning veterans in their last 6 months of active duty and trying to basically provide them internships here at Amazon. We lead our apprenticeship programs, which are primarily focused on technical roles. So, for example, if you're a truck driver in the military or maybe an infantry in the military and want to get into a more technical role, we have a Department of Labor approved apprenticeships that you can utilize to focus on a tech path that are also allow you to use your GI Bill when you're in those apprenticeship programs. That's a great pathway in the door for folks from the military. I lead all of our events, so whether they be virtual events or they be in-person events on different bases and around the U.S. and around the globe, to be honest, focused on veteran hiring. So we certainly encourage any transitioning veteran or military spouse to come check out one of our virtual in-person events where you can meet our recruiters directly. And last but not least, I lead all of our efforts to focus on artificial intelligence-based programs to help veterans find a job here at Amazon. One of the most common questions I get is, "Hey, I'm transitioning to the military. You know, I was infantry, or I was artillery in the military. What do I do at Amazon?" We have a tool that allows you to enter in your rank, your military specialty, your years of service, your clearance, and it matches you up with all Amazon's open roles. So again, anything that happens prior to you getting your foot in the door at Amazon are programs that fall under me and my team's purview.
Well, awesome. I think you may have answered my second question. What does Amazon do to support hiring veterans?
Yeah, I mean that's
Great
really it.
question.
But that said, the larger military affairs team, I think it's important to know. Well, my focus is really on the hiring side. We do a lot more than that. I'm part of the larger Amazon military affairs team. Our military affairs team actually has three separate pillars. One focused on hiring that I lead, but we also have a pillar focused on retention. So, what are we doing to make sure not only are veterans coming to Amazon, but how do we retain them, providing them mentorship, upskilling opportunities, and just helping manage their careers. There's no monitor detailer here at Amazon like there was in the military. So, and we've seen that veterans, it can have a hard time transitioning, especially coming right from the military. So, providing them support to make that difficult transition. We've also seen that if veterans make it here and can make it past the 18-month mark, they promote faster than our non-veteran peers. So, we do invest pretty heavily in our retention and our programs as well. And then thirdly, we have a community engagement team. And that team is primarily focused on really being a leader in the veteran mental health, veteran homelessness, and veteran hunger focused issues. So, again, that team is out there every day trying to engage with partners, finding ways Amazon can give back. To our veteran community in the military community writ large, and be a leader in the space. I think for all these spaces, whether it's hiring, whether it's retention, whether it's community engagement, I think we really we pride ourselves on the military affairs team as being a leader in the community, and not only helping veterans at Amazon, but hopefully moving the discussion forward, the larger discussion on veterans and military spouses, not only our company, but in companies across the globe.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. And I am a beneficiary of the Skill Bridge program, so I cannot say enough high praises about that program. So
Yeah, we're the biggest users of SkillBridge. To me, it's the best. You obviously get, typically it's about 12 weeks of time to kind of try before you buy, right? To make sure you're a good fit here at Amazon, and that also that Amazon's a good fit for you, right? Both ways, and make sure the good cultural fit, and the folks that come through the program also have a higher retention rate and promote faster as well. So it's a great program for a myriad of reasons. And again, whether you do it at Amazon or somewhere else, I certainly encourage it for any transitioning veteran.
100%. All right, so I'm going to transition a little bit away. So I'm sure you're tracking about AWS DeepRacer and our Army Navy competition. So what are your thoughts? What do you think about the STEM connection with veterans and the DeepRacer competition?
Yeah, it's great. I think it's important. And from a hiring lens, I think it's important because often Amazon can get pigeonholed by veterans. Say, oh, if you're a veteran, you want to work at Amazon, you work in a warehouse. People have that perception, and really a misperception of what veterans can do here. So I think it's important for Amazon to continue to highlight the opportunities and the focus that we have on STEM writ large and STEM education, with STEM opportunities for our veterans. And DeepRacer is a great way to highlight a small piece of that, because we do have a huge demand and a huge need for tech talent. And we'd love to get more veterans into those tech type of roles. So getting veterans excited about STEM programs early on, while they're during their time at the academies, or really just kind of talking about STEM for veterans as a whole is important. And the DeepRacer competition is a great way to kind of bring all that together, right? You're bringing together some competition between, in this case, Army and Navy, but also highlighting the importance of STEM, and the value that Amazon places on, a STEM background and education, and the opportunities it provides you if you do pursue that path.
Yeah, totally. It's exciting. We're looking forward to seeing who wins on Saturday. And speaking of Saturday, and I think I already know the answer to this, who do you think will win the Army-Navy football game?
Well, clearly, as a Marine, I have to go Navy, right? That's where we are. It's the one day of the year that Marines identify as being Navy, is Army-Navy game. So certainly pulling for the Naval Academy on Saturday. It's always the best game of the year, though. The passion, the pageantry, to see folks that, vast majority of them are not going to the NFL. They're doing it for love of country and for their fellow man and fellow service member. It blows you away every year, and proud to be back there. No matter who wins, it's always a great day. But I will be cheering loudly as I can for Navy on Saturday.
Well, I have to say the obligatory "Go Army, beat Navy."
So I understood.
Only time I get to say it today. So, Bo, I really appreciate you taking the time and looking forward to seeing you at the game on Saturday.
Sounds great, Matt. Thanks a lot. Looking forward to seeing you there as well. Should be fun.
All right. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, you too.
Bo Higgins, everybody. What an amazing story about trying to find great opportunities for our veterans, new place for them to learn, which is one of the cool things about DeepRacer. It's an educational tool first, teaching us about machine learning. And Ryan, you and I have been all around the globe watching people learn. What's the kind of things we've seen for DeepRacer from an education point of view?
Well, it's just a perfect way to get your foot in the door with machine learning. That's what we've seen. There have been plenty of people who have come to DeepRacer with a machine learning background, but it seems like at least half, if not more, of the people we talk to, this has been that first step for them. And it takes something that can be a little bit intimidating, quite frankly, when you talk about machine learning, just the concept of it. And it boils it down to something very simple. Just a few lines of code can get you started. And the next thing you know, you've got your own self-driving car zipping around the track. And what we're going to see here today are some very, very good teams that have put hours and hours and hours into training these models. These are not going to be those basic entry-level models that I was alluding to, but you can get started with very little background. And what we found is the competition element and the fun element of DeepRacer is a great way to jumpstart in your machine learning, but as well just to encourage people to go down this path from an educational perspective.
Yeah, and Bo talked about being able to help people start new careers. And I want to actually go to Nick Curry next, who is in charge of our emerging talent pipelines, and how Nick actually helps people also as they start to jumpstart their career. Folks, Nick Curry.
Good afternoon. My name is Matt Webb. I'm a technical program manager on the AWS Department of Defense team. I'm also co-lead for the AWS DeepRacer Army-Navy competition. And with me today, I have Nick Curry, who's the senior manager for emerging talent pipelines at Amazon Web Services. Nick, really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me.
My pleasure.
So real quick, what is your role at AWS?
So my role at AWS is to ensure that AWS brings in as many builders from different backgrounds that we can. So I focus on emerging talent pipelines, which is defined as folks that need upskilling, reskilling. They go through a different form of an internship, a fellowship. Really, it's folks that are looking to maybe make a career pivot or transition from the military service or a different service into a cloud role within AWS.
Oh, awesome. So what is AWS doing to find emerging talent?
So it's actually a very exciting opportunity for AWS. And I have a team of recruiters and program managers that are very passionate about the types of candidates that we go after for roles in the cloud. So all of our roles that we focus on are technical in nature. And what we're doing is looking in different parts of the traditional recruiting funnel to see if there's other ways to bring people in. We believe on our team that if we provide access and opportunities to more candidates that are outside of the traditional programs, that will bring in different builders that not only just look differently, but think differently. And that's really important for AWS. We want to have people that come in and ask questions, think differently, can come up with creative solutions. One of the best ways we do that on my team is we focus on the military community. And so we have dedicated programs for transitioning service members that are leaving the military and are looking for their next job after service, whether that's retirement or the end of their normal contract. We also focus on the veteran community as well. So those that are already out of the military or maybe looking to pivot into a new career after their military transition. And then, of course, we would be remiss by not supporting the members of the military spouse community. And so we have programs and pipelines for all three legs of the military community to make sure that we're doing as much as we can to focus on that type of emerging talent coming out of the military community.
Yeah, I know AWS is super supportive of all of those. And I'm fortunate enough to be a beneficiary of that. I was a SkillBridge intern, and now I'm here.
That's right. And that SkillBridge is one of the many ways that we bring great people into AWS as they transition out of the military. So glad that we helped you out, man.
Awesome. So, Nick, I'm sure you know a little bit about AWS DeepRacer. What are your thoughts on the DeepRacer Army-Navy competition?
Well, any competition between the Army and Navy is an important one. It's great to bring that kind of rivalry into the cloud as well. And so I think it's fantastic that we're doing this, because I know the members of the military community are good AWS customers already, and to be able to expose them to this type of technology, using machine learning and autonomous vehicles. Both branches of the military and all branches have autonomous vehicles now. So to be able to see how that's developed and used and how they can have participation in it and make it a competition, but still learn at the same time is really exciting. That's really what we want to do, is provide real world practical applications in the cloud, but do it in a fun way.
Yeah, exactly. And it is super fun, and we'll get to see them race on Saturday.
Looking forward to that for sure.
So final question. I'm sure I already know the answer. It should be Army, but who do you think will win the Army-Navy football game?
Well, I love all branches of the military equally, so we serve all of them here at AWS. But as a retired Navy enlisted submarine sailor for 20 years, I got to root like I do every single year for the Navy. So go Navy, beat Army.
I'm so outnumbered. It's not even fair. Well, Nick, I really appreciate it. Thank you for taking your time, and thank you for all you do to support the veteran and the military spouse community.
It's our pleasure, and it's the easiest job we have at Amazon because the military community make great employees and great Amazonians. So thanks for the opportunity to tell a little bit more about it.
All right. Thank you.
Nick Curry, thank you so much for that wonderful conversation about how to upskill people and especially the idea of using DeepRacer to introduce people to real world practical applications, and the fact that autonomous driving is happening live in the Army and the Navy, which then goes to the discussion of who's racing today, who is going to represent the Army, who will represent the Navy. Ryan, fill us in.
Well, we've got two races coming your way today. The first one features 8 teams that have qualified to be here, 4 from the Naval Academy, 4 from West Point. Later on, we'll have actually some from the academies themselves that will be racing. We'll get to that in a little while. But these are the 4 teams that we're going to be seeing here, and we'll go in the order from the slowest in qualifying to the fastest. So the first team we're going to see is the Black Knights, representing the United States Military Academy. Then we're going to see NRL, which is John Klein from the Naval Research Laboratory. They'll be up second. Coqui 1.0 will be the third team. They'll be representing the Army. United States Naval Academy Machine Learning Team Mike Hotel will be fourth. Then Team Digital Caterpillar, United States Naval Academy Machine Learning Team Sierra Charlie, Team Ouzelfinch. That's a name we're excited to tell you more about as we get a little bit deeper into this. And then the fastest of the 8 teams in qualifying, a veteran not just of these Army-Navy competitions, but also of the DeepRacer League as a whole, Doug Racer, who had a remarkable time in qualifying, easily the quickest of those that have made the field. But we've seen this from Doug in the past in these Army-Navy competitions, fast in qualifying, but he's got to put it all together on the racetrack, and that's what we're about to do.
That's right. We've seen Doug Racer in our main competitions that we handle globally, the AWS DeepRacer League. Doug Racer did compete, as you mentioned, last year, but both of our winners in our first 2 competitions, Deep Blue Sea representing the Navy, Green Machine from Aberdeen representing the Army, neither of those teams are here today. So we're definitely going to crown a new champion. We're about ready to race, but before we begin, I do want to take a moment and introduce some additional heroes that are part of our racing day today. What we've got over here, this is our pit crew. We have 4 amazing people that have taken time out to help us out physically on the track. This is our Supreme Commander, Pat, here. Pat, tell us a little bit about you and your team. Introduce everybody.
Thanks, Blaine. My name is Pat Blair. I'm a solutions architect based out of Chicago, and I'm the pit crew lead and designated driver for today. I have the pleasure of being assisted by Dave Colon, who is a solutions architect based out of Delaware, Sarabi Sharma, solutions architect based out of Arlington, Virginia, and last but not least, David Smith, who is a solutions architect on the DeepRacer team based out of London.
We appreciate all the work you folks are doing. Tell us just a little bit of the kind of work you'll be doing here on the track and off the field.
So we'll be the ones who will be on the track, making sure that the cars make a valid lap, resetting the cars if they go off track, and I will be the one that is controlling the speed and start and stop on the cars for the drivers.
Also, there's a lot of maintenance that goes on behind the scenes. These vehicles, they run around, I mean, they smash into walls. There's a repair that needs to happen. There's planned maintenance even during the race.
Correct. So we change out batteries regularly to make sure that we have a fair and fun competition. And we'll also be performing repairs to the cars if they run into the walls.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And a big thank you to all the pit crew. We'll be seeing you running around here on the track. But now let's talk a little bit more about the format of the race itself. Ryan, tell us about the actual format.
Well, we're going to see each of these 8 teams a single time. They get 3 minutes of track time, and within those 3 minutes, their goal is to set their fastest lap possible. And it's the single fastest lap we care about. It's not an average or anything like that. At the end of 3 minutes, we'll take that fastest lap, we'll throw it up on the leaderboard, and then the next team will go. And at the end of all 8, we'll see who has the fastest time. The team with the fastest single lap time will be the 2022 champion.
I love that. All right, we are now ready to start racing. Our car is on the field right now, and now we're just waiting for our pit crew to go ahead and get into position themselves. As you can see, the layout of the track, it's a simple oval from a first glance, but actually there's some pretty tricky parts on it. We'll talk about that as the race begins. Right now we're seeing how close we are to actually beginning the race. Does our pit crew need a couple more minutes, or are we set to run? Looking over there, waiting for a thumbs up. Okay, well, our Supreme Commander Pat says we are ready to roll. Enough talking for me. Let's begin this. We are under a green flag. We will begin as soon as they launch this vehicle.
And as soon as they do, the car will trip the automatic timing line there at the start-finish stripe, which you could see with their nice close-up shot here. And then the 3 minutes will begin. The first team is Black Knights USMA Army, of course, representing the United States Army. This is a team of AI enthusiasts comprised of military and civilian faculty and cadets in electrical engineering, as well as the computer science department. A lot of work has gone into this model. They qualified at a time of 15.996. But now the model goes into the physical car, and we're about to race it on the physical track plane, and that's where the challenges really begin.
All right, we got a thumbs up. We are ready to begin. It should launch any second now. And as you mentioned, as soon as it crosses that start-finish line, there's a sensor in the line which will actually trigger the beginning. We are just waiting for it to begin. However, a little bit of a glitch there as our track boss stepped on the line and accidentally got the timer going. So we got to reset that really fast. We got to change out the vehicle. Sometimes it's the joy of live racing. We often have to swap out the things. That's why we have a number of cars in the background. We are about to begin. And there we go. The vehicle is now underway and goes straight into the wall. This, unfortunately, is part of the amazing thing of automated driving is the way these vehicles behave.
Well, that's what it's all about, right? And again, these models, the reinforcement learning models, they've all been trained in the simulator, Blaine. Everything's been done virtually, and we do our best in that simulated environment to recreate what they will see on the physical racetrack. But there are, of course, going to be a few little differences. And so as that transition is made, sometimes you will see a model struggling with this. But again, this car, it's making its own decisions, and sometimes they make the right decisions, sometimes not so much. The first lap in the books, though, at 40.532 seconds.
So to put this in perspective, this particular track, assuming the vehicle is behaving properly, we expect to see times in the 14 seconds, 13 seconds. The world record for this track is below 10 seconds, and that was set earlier this year. But the behavior of the car is really what we're looking at to determine the time. And right now, this car is not making choices that we want to have happen. In fact, there's right now a pause. We can see on the track, the entire wall has fallen down due to the abuse this vehicle is putting on.
Yeah, that's not what you're hoping for here out of the model. And the team told us that really their goal was to have this model follow the center line of the track. And it's been able to do that, at least in terms of the straightaways. And it's just having trouble picking up the the turns in the track. And what they've trained the car to look for is really what it comes down to here. There are a couple different ways you can train these models. You can have it focus on that dotted line at the center of the track. You can have it use the white lines on the outside as a reference point. There's a bunch of different ways you can do this. In fact, we've got a team a little bit later that put their model through an ideal track, an ideal driving line kind of simulator, basically, to figure out where the best line around the track would be, and then using waypoints actually to train their car to get around. There are a bunch of different philosophies on how to do this, but evidently this one just hasn't quite worked out according to plan here for our first team.
We'll talk more about the meaning behind the idea of training and that, but you talk about this waypoints, and I want to jump right to some of the teams we've seen around the world that have revolutionized waypoints, including Dynapon Printing out of Japan.
Yep.
That, similar to what you described, they brought in a motorsports expert to actually map out on the track they were using that year what the perfect line was, and using a waypoint strategy trying to motivate the vehicle to follow that line. But in this case, the vehicle we're seeing on the track right now seems to have no motivation at all to follow any line.
No, and it looks like time's going to run out here on this lap. So the best time, unfortunately, with quite a bit of assistance from our track boss, at 32.478. Actually did go a little bit faster that last time. So 31 seconds goes into the leaderboard. That's the best time out of our first group. Black Knights, representing the United States Military Academy, their 3 minutes is complete.
And that now takes us to our first Navy competitor who is up on the track next. Our Navy competitor, John Klein, NRL, the Naval Reserve Laboratory, is next to take the track. Not a lot of additional information on John, but certainly we're hoping for a model that has a better understanding of how to behave on this track condition in the real world. As you mentioned, all of our vehicles were trained in a simulator. Translating from simulation to real is one of the challenges our racers have.
Yeah, exactly right. And this model was able to qualify with a time of 12.534 seconds. And already out of the box, you can see it is picking up those track limits and it's making the right decisions. It's not, at least out of the box, the quickest model that we've seen, Blaine, but certainly pretty stable. It looks like it's looking for that center line and trying to stay with it as much as possible and going at a rate of speed where it can make the corners with some consistency. So the first lap was pretty good, 17.431. Did have a problem there in that second to last corner, which is really the most difficult that we've seen on this track throughout a year of competition. So no surprise there.
We talked about that final corner, that corner number 3, as the vehicle smashes through the barrier, actually out into the sidewall. But again, no damage to the vehicle there. The problem with that turn number 3 seems to be the way the vehicle enters the turn. If it enters at the wrong angle, it confuses the vehicle we see almost to the point where it doesn't realize there is a turn. So this then becomes the choice of the racer. The only control the racer has is the maximum velocity of the vehicle. Inside that, the vehicle makes all its own choices. But if the vehicle's going too fast around there, some models are not able to see the corner and make the pivot.
Yeah, think about it from the context of driving down the highway yourself, and go back to your driver's education classes where they talk about how far down the road you need to look when you're going 30 miles per hour versus 60 miles per hour. The faster you're going, the further down the road you need to look to be able to make decisions because your environment is changing more rapidly around you. And that's the same for these DeepRacer cars. Using the deep lens camera at the front of the car, that's basically the eyes of this DeepRacer machine, and it's seeing this information come in. It's computing what it's seeing, and then it's going back to the lessons it learned in its training to hopefully make the right decisions as it goes around the track. And it looks like using that speed multiplier, we might have found a bit of a sweet spot here for this model, Blaine. This is looking very consistent now as that speed has come down. It's starting to be able to make those decisions a little bit better. And look at that. It does negotiate that corner cleanly this time as it starts to slow down, and a new personal best lap of 14.841 seconds.
There we go. We were hoping for times under 15 seconds across the board. There's our first clock under that 15-second mark. 30 seconds still left for this competitor. Again, it is their best individual lap on 3 minutes around the track, but a 14.841. That's a good start for Navy as they begin with their first competitor of the day. This last time around the track, a little slow. I don't see this one as being an improvement, but they crossed the line with 5 seconds left. This lap will count even though the clock reaches 0. So the timer is still making sure what it's going to be. And this one's looking good. And as soon as I start talking, off it goes.
And you could tell whether it was the car using its own decision-making schema to accelerate there, or if that was the result of using the speed multiplier there in real time. But the car started to pick up the paces through the S's on the back half of the track and just lost its bearings. And I think there is a position where if it's taking those S curves in such a way where it's pointed kind of towards that final corner, that camera might be picking up that other part of the racetrack and thinking that's where it needs to go. Nevertheless, pretty good run. I think that that time's going to need to be adjusted. Our timing staff will take a look at that. I think maybe that line got triggered accidentally, because I think the best time was really in about the 14-second range. But still, that is provisionally the fastest time we've seen so far.
That's right. Yeah, we'll have our judges go ahead and reset that time that's on the clock, get the right thing. But now on the track, Kokwi 1.0 representing the Army, coming around nice and easy around the track. This also seems like a good model for this layout.
Yeah, that absolutely so. And Kokwi here is a model developed by Felix Mejia, who is from Puerto Rico. The Kokwi is a frog, actually, from Puerto Rico, and it's an emblem for Puerto Ricans in many instances, I've learned. So really, really cool. Off to a pretty good start here. Let's check the time the second time by. Gave up some time with that wall contact, so dropping down to a 17.1, but 16.371, the best so far here, not even a minute into this attempt.
Kokwi 1.0 is actually Felix Mejia. And Felix did want us to point out this model is dedicated to his wife, Catherine, and their son, Felix Jr., who's helped them throughout the learning process of this model. I love family. We've actually seen some fun family groups throughout our years here in DeepRacer. This is our 4th year of competition, our 3rd Army-Navy game, but lots of family have been part of it.
It's a huge part, and especially for those that are really invested in DeepRacer, it's a major time commitment. So you need that family support to make it work, to compete at the highest level, and we're seeing that here as well. Looked like Felix was starting to find a little bit of something there, but it looks like maybe as the speed has come up, some of the consistency has gone down. The best lap so far at 15.4 would provisionally be the second fastest so far. It's about 0.6 of a second away from the time we saw from NRL a little bit earlier. So that's what he's chasing right here. Doesn't need to find much, Blaine, to take that top spot.
No, and that's the thing right now. We expect times to get perhaps below 14 seconds. NRL Navy sitting at 14.8 is the official time coming in from their lap. But Kokwi 1.0 trying to get that extra zoom, but that turn number 3 coming around to the backstretch there just seems to be the Achilles heel for these vehicles. And it's because of the way the vehicle orients itself coming onto this track.
Yep, that's exactly right. It's a difficult section of the track. It's very, very tight. And to your point earlier, the positioning of the car entering that corner is so important. That time, it was very well positioned. It made the corner easily. And there should be time for 2 more laps here. Let's see if they can find something a bit more stable. That was a good start to the lap. Let's see if the positioning is correct here. And indeed, it looks pretty strong. He did have to slow down quite a bit, and it gave up too much time. So no improvement there, Blaine, but still, well, I was about to say time for 1 more lap, but that ends in the wall.
Yeah, trying to get a little extra velocity, trying to take something off, and there it goes, trying to dive towards the start-finish line in the wrong direction. But that's all right. We'll go ahead and come around all the way to home, but 15.459, a good run, provisionally second place. We still have 5 more racers to go. Now, we've talked about this idea of the pit crew being responsible for the maintenance of the car, the maintenance of the walls. We've had people running around trying to make sure the walls are standing up. They're also swapping out batteries. the vehicle itself, and we'll get a chance to see one up close. I'm going to actually have our pit crew bring a spare vehicle over to me when they get a chance. But the vehicles, they're a rolling laptop. I mean, you can plug a monitor and a keyboard into it. It runs Linux. You could do your day job on this thing, but that's boring. Why would you want to do that? Instead, we put wheels under it and made it the world's fastest laptop. But let's go ahead and take a look at what's under the hood here. So it's a simple plastic shell that covers the inside of the vehicle. And as we look at it, again, you can go ahead and plug your monitor and everything in, but the front part is where all of the data comes in while it's racing. Ryan, you already talked about this. This is a deep lens camera. You can actually get these as standalone and build other machine learning projects, such as, why is my cat bringing mice into my house in the middle of the night? Yes, that's a real project. People did that one. But that then feeds into the computer, which makes decisions based on the machine learning model. So there's a battery that drives the computer and a battery that then drives the car below that. They want to make sure the vehicles on the track have the fastest times. So while the battery may be good for 6 or 8 runs, they're swapping them out after every 3 drivers.
Which is what we've learned. There's been a lot of experimentation done actually in the last few weeks about at what level you do see performance dropping off as the battery starts to wear down. And so that's been implemented as a best practice based on that experimentation. So our next developer, this is from the Navy. This is Team Mike Hotel from the U.S. Navy here. And this was the 5th fastest in qualifying to make it here into this round, and we'll see what Team Mike Hotel can do. The early lap there, Blaine, not super stable, 24.630, but with several off-track instances. Now that car's slowing down a little bit and looking a bit more consistent.
That's right. So the driver right now, again, can only control the maximum velocity, trying to find the sweet spot for the vehicle that's the best for the way the vehicle has been trained. And it's probably worth talking about the way these autonomous vehicles are trained compared to some of the ones you see in the real world. We heard earlier today in the interviews, the Army and Navy are both using autonomous vehicles. So's Uber and other companies. And the way many of those companies use self-driving cars, the way they train them is through traditional machine learning models, using supervised learning, where you go ahead and provide hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of images that show what a road is and a stop sign and a school bus. Yeah, you know all those captchas you click on to say, is this a stop sign? Yeah, you're training someone else's machine learning model there. But this is completely different. This is reinforcement learning. These are vehicles that have taught themselves how to drive based on a simple reward function that just optimizes for the outcome. So say you simply want to say, I want to make sure you get through this section of track fast, and I want to make sure you stay on the pavement, and I want to make sure you optimize for these waypoints that you're talking for, but then you let the car loose to teach itself, like you might teach a dog. And you train a dog by giving them rewards if they go over the teeter-totter properly. And when they don't, they get nothing. And the dog at first is confused, doesn't know where it's going. But after a while, it optimizes to get treats, just like our models here on the car, hopefully, are optimized for speed.
It's like you like to say, it's exploration and exploitation. That's what reinforcement learning is about. So you give the parameters to the virtual version of this car using the reinforcement learning model, and then you turn it loose for hours. Just let it go and explore its world, get those rewards for good behavior, get no rewards for bad behavior, and over time, the idea is that the car will learn from that experience to make the right decisions, and then the real test of whether or not it can make the right decisions is the competition that you're seeing here. But just like the dog in Blaine's analogy, just because it knows how it's supposed to go over the teeter-totter doesn't mean that's always what it's going to choose to do when the spotlight is on, right?
And that's the fun of reinforcement learning. And that's why we're enjoying teaching it here for developers, because these vehicles develop personalities like dogs, like teenagers. It's not what I would use if I wanted to train a car to be out in the real world with pedestrians, because I don't want any mistakes there. I don't want bad behavior. But here on the track, it's just fun to watch.
That it is. So Team Mike Hotel just wrapped up the run. 19.437 was the best. And actually, we got an interesting note from this team about how they went about training this model. And it kind of fits into what you were just saying, as we see now Team Digital Caterpillar on the track right now representing the Army. But 3 instances of 3 hours, three-hour blocks of training for that last model. That's how they chose to go about doing this. They would see those results. They would then tweak the parameters a little bit and then send the model back out for more training. So now Team Digital Caterpillar on the track, and Blaine, a pretty good first lap there at 17.825 seconds.
17.825 will provisionally put them in 3rd place. Right now, again, our leader, NRL from the Navy, at 14.841. Just to put this in perspective, the world record is sub 10 seconds. We are expecting times to drop, though. I'm expecting a sub 14 seconds before we get through. This is our 4th of 8 competitors, so we still haven't hit the heart of the order yet. But what we're seeing is a good model. It's able to understand it, but it seems to really have trouble around that final set of corners, which all of our vehicles so far have struggled with.
And this is a veteran team right here, Team Digital Caterpillar. Their team lead has actually competed in all 3 of these Army-Navy DeepRacer competitions, the only developer that can say that. So that experience is going to be important. 4 people in total on this team, all ML enthusiasts, and really enjoying this chance to get involved with DeepRacer.
Having teams, to me, is one of the fun things. As we go around the world, we've seen a number of teams. In fact, we had our world championship just last week in Las Vegas, and it was the Taiwan, the Computer Gaming Institute, and NYCU, that actually swept 1st, 2nd, and 3rd place, working together as a team to learn, but each individually building their own models.
Yeah, so taking that experience, 4 different developers working on things, taking best practices and bringing it all together, that's a huge help. You see that across the board in sports and in business. It definitely applies to DeepRacer as well. 17.625, still the best time from this model at this point. That's provisionally the 3rd fastest. Needs to find a couple seconds to challenge per second, about 3 seconds to get up and challenge NRL, which has held the top spot since very early in this competition.
That's right. So I would have expected NRL to be challenged more. Right now, the fastest person next to him, Kokui, at 15.4, almost half a second back from NRL. Team Digital Caterpillar, 17.625, almost running out of time this lap. And then at their current speed, they're only going to have time for 1 more lap. Here they come around. This is going to be the make or break for them. And the answer is break.
Yeah, unfortunately so. You could tell that they felt the need to be aggressive there because of the time they needed to find. The speed came up and unfortunately simply lost track, lost its bearings, couldn't stay on the track, and that's going to be costly because with the reset there, looks like 36.179 on that last lap. So can't improve. It was ultimately the very first lap that was the best. 17.625 is the speed, provisionally 3rd quickest, so would be good enough for the podium, but still a couple more developers to go. 3, in fact, still to go in this competition.
Next up, this is representing the United States Naval Academy machine learning team, Sierra Charlie. We already saw previously from the Naval Academy machine learning team, Mike Hotel. This is their 2nd team from this particular academy.
Yes, and this is the team I was alluding to earlier that actually used what's called the K1999 optimal racing track algorithm to find the ideal line through these corners, and then using that data to generate some waypoints and training with those waypoints. So there are going to be certain places that the car has been incentivized to go, certain corners that it's going to be incentivized to position itself in a certain way, and that's what they hope is going to be the ticket to getting them to the top of the leaderboard.
It's a good strategy. However, what we're seeing on the track seems to be a little more shaky than the strategy they've put forward. The vehicle is trying to navigate the turns as it comes around. It does get past that tricky 3rd turn, but kind of crawling to a stop as it goes back towards the start-finish line. So not the opening that we expected from Sierra Charlie.
And again, I wonder if this could be an instance of a model that is really well suited to the virtual world, but struggling when it gets plugged into the car and dealing with the variables that you get of the real track. For instance, in the virtual simulator, you don't have a track boss walking around in the middle of the track. Now, our track bosses do a really good job to try and stay out of the line of sight of the cars, but there's also shadows that are being cast from either the track boss or things around the track based on the lighting around the track. The little gaps where the track comes together, you don't have that in the simulated world. So there's a bunch of variables that you have to take into account. And if you don't have much experience racing on the physical track, it can be a real challenge to go from one to the other.
And I also want to point out something you said about the idea that the vehicle may be very well situated to race on that virtual track. And I'm going to say specifically the track that they ran the algorithm for. And while it may have the same shape as this track, those subtle differences, if the vehicle is overtrained or overfitted for that specific area, that environment, subtle changes, wrinkles in the track. This is running on a carpet, and as much as our setup crew has tried to make it as flat as possible, there's wrinkles, there's alterations in the terrain. The shape may be the same, but color changes, lighting changes, as you mentioned, any of these could disrupt an overfitted vehicle. And that overfitting is a conversation in itself.
It is, and I'll let you go off on that here in just a second. But one thing I want to bring up to your point about those little changes, physics are simulated in RoboMaker in the simulator, but there are going to be, again, some subtle differences. And going back to the World Championships that happened here recently in Vegas, some of the early part of the competition were held on vinyl track surfaces. Others were held on carpet track surfaces, and you wouldn't think that would matter, but I'm telling you, if you talk to those 50 racers that were part of those championships there in Las Vegas, those kinds of minute differences can have a massive impact on these machine learning models.
I mean, it's the same as changing out the compounds of a tire in a Formula One race. It's something as simple as that has a dramatic effect in the final elements. And so here, while everyone's racing with the same tires and the same vehicle, the way the model knows how to interpret it makes a big difference. But this will be the end of Sierra Charlie's run. It's gone ahead and finished that. 22.632 looks to be their final official time. And now we are down to the best two racers, the best from Army, the best from Navy. Up next, Team Ouzelfinch.
And Blaine, I know you're excited to talk about the Ouzelfinch. I'm not going to deprive you of that chance. So, yeah, you're the one who tipped me off on this interesting story.
All right. Well, we'll go ahead and talk about that right now because once again, we're waiting for our pit crew to swap out batteries really fast. But the idea of the Ouzelfinch actually comes, and I want to make sure I get this right. It's the Field Artillery Brigade, the 42nd Field Artillery Brigade. It's their insignia. And it represents a bird that was found. It is a featherless bird that flies backwards at supersonic speeds.
You know, I would love to see one of these. Evidently, it might require the aid of some inebriants. That's the legend, at least, for where the Ouzelfinch came from. But it's been affixed and adorned on everything from planes to missiles, and it has a knack for going fast, does the Ouzelfinch, and that's what they're looking for here.
Not only going fast, but going fast backwards. And one of the things people say about the DeepRacer car, it does look like it's driving backwards, simply based on the way the vehicle is shaped with the deep lens camera in front.
Yeah, so this is a team led by Michael Now, who he served in the Army Air Defense Artillery Regiment. And so that's, again, where the Ouzelfinch name factors into the equation here. Second fastest in qualifying, Blaine, but this has not been a strong first lap, it has to be said. Still plenty of time, though, to start to find its bearings, but hard to find your bearings when you're flying backwards.
That's right. And that's really what we're looking at right now, is trying to make sure that we're taking advantage of the camera, that we're not flying backwards, but it kind of feels like this vehicle isn't sure which direction is north and which way is up. It's got a confusion I would not expect for the best racer coming out of qualifiers.
Yeah, it is a bit surprising, certainly for the top racer out from the Army in qualifiers, second fastest overall. you can see it definitely has the ability to pick out its environment. Just the way that it was going through the S curves there, certainly following that center line quite nicely, but it just hasn't been able to put it all together for a single lap to this point.
Well, and the sad thing is this is Army's last chance. If Team Ouzelfinch does not move forward, then the Navy will win. And granted, Doug Racer from the Navy has still not raced, but NRL, who was our second racer of the day, is sitting right now in the number 1 position, and only Team Ouzelfinch can knock Navy off of that automatic win. And with 1 minute left and the way Ouzelfinch is behaving, I'm not seeing that perfect lap yet.
Yeah, that's a great point with NRL holding down that top spot. Koki right now, second fastest representing the Army, but Ouzelfinch here is going to need to find quite a bit of time. 18.2 is the best lap so far. NRL's time was 14.8 seconds. That is a wide gulf that needs to be bridged and not much time with which to do it.
No, 4 seconds is a huge chasm, and the way this vehicle is finding the wall more than finding the center line, I am not sure with 30 seconds left it's even going to put up any kind of improvement. But let's go ahead and see. This could be the run. It's got a good choice, and nope, I was wrong.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Still time, I think, perhaps to get around and start one more lap. Would need to find about 0.6 of a second to get onto the provisional podium. Interesting to note that while Navy does have the top spot, there are 2 Army teams currently on the podium. Doesn't look like Team Ouzelfinch will be one of them because that wall contact there meant that the clock has run out, and that was the final lap of the attempt. So Team Ouzelfinch from the Army will slot in the 4th spot, just behind Team Digital Caterpillar and ahead of Team Mike Hotel.
So that does mean Navy will win today's head-to-head competition of the U.S. Army versus the U.S. Navy. However, Army is sitting in second and third place, but this is our final racer of the day. Doug Racer representing Navy, and again, Doug Racer part of our general larger AWS competitions as well.
Exactly. We saw Doug Racer attempt to qualify for Las Vegas in a number of the monthly pro finales. Ultimately did make the field as an enterprise wildcard, finished 41st in the world out of 150,000 plus that competed this year. Easily the fastest qualifier, but has a lot more experience racing virtually than physically. So we'll see if any of that virtual speed can transition here to the physical racetrack.
Well, a hard problem right there on turn number 1 and turn number 3, both causing problems. Still hasn't even made it around the first time on the track, kind of crawling to a start. There it goes across the line. 27.5 seconds. Certainly expect more. But again, this is one of those things we talk about, that transition between the virtual world and the physical world, trying to find that wonderful spot. And Doug Racer, as you mentioned, is a great virtual racer. We're not seeing it yet in physical.
Fortunately not. Doug, who had 2 deployments as a submariner on the USS Hawaii out of Pearl Harbor, has transitioned into the DeepRacer League, starting with an internal competition within his company back in 2020. And as we've mentioned, has turned into a very stalwart competitor on the virtual side of the DeepRacer League. But this is what makes this competition fun, because it is a physical competition. You have to be able to plug that model into the physical race car and have it perform. So far for Doug Racer, the best time, 25.255. That is nowhere near threatening NRL, who was the second developer to go in our list here today, Blaine, and has been sitting up there ever since, and really no one has really threatened since Coqui very early on.
That's right. And while Las Vegas does not post actual odds on our races yet, Vegas, we would believe that coming into here, just looking at things on paper, that Doug Racer would have been the hands down favorite. And while the Naval Research Laboratory certainly has a lot of experience in machine learning, so does every other team. No advantage there. Why Doug Racer isn't automatically on top? This is kind of one of the surprises, but big shout out to NRL for sitting on top of the podium right from the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, Doug qualified at a time of 8.1 seconds. The next closest was 11.0. So there was a huge gulf in qualifying. But again, if you read the bio on Doug, had a really great qualifying time in a previous Army-Navy competition, struggled when it came to the physical track. So, unfortunately, we are seeing some of what we've seen in the past rear its ugly head once again.
This may be our last good lap. Depends what we see here. And we see what we've seen before. Right there, coming out of turn number 1, right into the wall.
Wow, this is looking great for NRL. And I have to say, going back to that model, it looked really steady from the get-go. That was the first model that we saw that really looked like it had it pretty well figured out. And ultimately, it proves to be the strongest in this great field of 8.
And there we go, crossing the start-finish line. That is the end for Doug Racer, representing the Navy. 22.814 is their final time. That's a good time, but does not podium. And so this then gives us our final 1, 2, 3 of the race.
Look at that. So Navy does sit on top, which moves the overall record now to 2-1 in Navy's favor in the 3 years of this competition. But 2 members of the podium do belong to the Army. So they've got some bragging rights there, too. In fact, Army with positions 2, 3, and 4. So 3 of the top 4 belong to the Army, but the one that everyone wanted, that top spot, goes to NRL from the U.S. Navy.
Absolutely. So big congratulations there. For those of you just joining us, this is AWS DeepRacer. This is the Army versus Navy game. We are broadcasting live here out of the suburbs of Washington, D.C., right in the shadow of US East 1. I'm Blaine Sundred. I'm here with Ryan Marine. We just watched the Open Army versus Navy competition. Coming up next is the U.S. Naval Academy versus the U.S. Military Academy. And this has kind of been one of the things people have been waiting for. And to clue us in a little bit about what this actually means, I want to hear a little bit more about, though, our sponsor coming in here. We want to give a big shout out to the Travis Manion Foundation, who is hosting the watch party there at the link where some of you are watching right now. Travis Manion Foundation does some amazing work for the veterans out there. Let's hear more from Josh Jabin, the Chief Operating Officer of the Travis Manion Foundation.
With me today is Josh Jabin, Chief Operating Officer for the Travis Manion Foundation. Josh, really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me this afternoon. I know you're super busy, especially with the game coming up.
This is one of the best weeks of the year. Happy to talk with you, Matt.
Awesome. So would you mind expanding a little bit on your role with the Travis Manion Foundation and what you do there?
Yep. So I am the Chief Operating Officer. I've been with TMF for about 8 years. I actually started off as a very engaged volunteer when I was still on active duty, and then about 8 years ago came on full time. And as we've grown as an organization, I've been able to grow with it. So I started off as the program officer in charge of all of our programming, and then moved up to Chief Operating Officer about 5 years ago.
All right, awesome. So what is the mission of the Travis Manion Foundation? And I know they support veterans and that kind of stuff, but do you mind giving a little bit more background?
Yeah, absolutely. So the type of support that we give to veterans is very different than I think the way that a lot of other organizations support veterans. It's almost flipped from the way that most people think of it. Our mission is to empower veterans and families of the fallen to develop character in future generations. There's 2 sides to what we do. The first is investing in those veterans and families of the fallen, providing them with leadership development and training them for both personal development, but then also to make them the volunteer leaders within their community. The other side is that they go out and execute as those volunteer leaders. The main way we do that is through our Character Does Matter program. So we train veterans to become mentors to young adults to teach them about character and leadership. They can also lead chapters and do other service within their community. So rather than us giving veterans something, we actually ask of them to go out and serve and to continue sharing what they've learned as veterans with the next generation.
No, that's awesome. I know last year we had a great experience with the Trans-Manu Foundation, and really excited to partner again with you this go around at the Army Navy football game. So a little bit about AWS DeepRacer. So and I'm going to ask you what you think about it here in just a second, but what it is it uses machine learning to help train cars, little autonomous vehicles. You train them virtually first, and then you race them on the little real racetrack. Take that model off and race it on a real racetrack with a little car, somebody chasing it around. But interested in your thoughts of how you see the AWS DeepRacer competition, especially in the construct of Travis Manion and how we can get veterans involved in stuff like STEM.
So, veterans are not a monolith, right? Like we are representative of the larger population. And I think that anything that appeals, what appeals to one veteran doesn't appeal to the other. And what we're trying to do is be able to reach a wider swath of veterans. So I think that absolutely there's going to be certain veterans that are attracted to this competition and will come find us. And then hopefully once they find us, we can introduce them to some of the other things that Travis Manion Foundation does. Get them back out into the community to serve, get them back investing in themselves and transitioning what they learned in the military to their next chapter of life. We learned a lot. There was the government invested in us. I was a Marine for 20 years. The Marine Corps invested a lot in me, but those skills and that leadership needs some help sometimes in finding the next mission. And I think what you do is great for attracting a certain type of veteran and then getting them to go on to do some of the other services that we offer.
Yeah, really excited for this year. So honestly, probably the most important question I'm going to ask you in this whole interview is, and I'm sure the answer will be Army, is who is going to win the football game?
Go Navy. I went to the Naval Academy. I'm class of 2001. I was actually a senior on the wrestling team when Travis Manion was a freshman. So I am rooting hard for Navy football this weekend.
Man,
and I'll tell you what, I know on paper they may look like the better team, but that was also true last year. Throw your record out the window. Forget about on paper who's supposed to be the better team. When these two teams fight, or these two teams play each other, it's going to be a fight. And every year we figure that out, that it's not always the team that you think it's going to be that ends up victorious.
Well, I'm excited. I'll be there, and I'll have my Army swag on. I gotta counteract all the Navy swag. So,
well, this year we're lucky to have it in Philly. I love when the game's in Philly. I think you really get sort of equal representation on both sides. But I do expect that Navy will be victorious by the end.
All right. Well, hey, Josh, I really appreciate you taking the time this afternoon, and go Army. That's all.
Go Navy. Beat Army. Thanks, Matt.
All right. Thanks, Josh.
Josh Jabin from the Travis Manion Foundation. What a wonderful project they're doing there. And again, a big shout out to all of you right now in Philadelphia as part of the watch party sponsored by the Travis Manion Foundation. We're glad you're watching. If you're watching over Twitch or over YouTube, thanks for being part of our community as well. DeepRacer, it's all around the globe, and it's designed to help elevate people like the veterans we talk about, learn more about machine learning, and also just have fun.
Yeah, what a great time this was, too. Great competition across the board. And you know what? Josh was right. He was talking about the football game, but it applied to DeepRacer as well. You could throw out any pre-game, pre-race expectations because it all got turned on its head. Phenomenal performance again from NRL to claim the top spot. Was the slowest of the qualifiers from Navy coming in, but got the job done when it counted the most. All you got to do is make the race, right? And he did, and then had a chance to put up the big time. And 14.841 is a good time around this track.
Absolutely. Making the race, doing what you can. And now we talk about who's going to be making the race representing the United States Military Academy versus the United States Naval Academy. And we actually have Midshipman Sam Chenow who is representing a larger team along with Elizabeth Wrightson and Commander Haroon. They are part of the U.S. Naval Academy team we're about to see. I want to hear more from them about how they develop, what their strategies are. Folks, the U.S. Naval Academy team.
Hello, everyone. My name is Matt Webb. I'm a technical program manager on the AWS Department of Defense team, and I'm also the co-lead for the AWS DeepRacer Army-Navy competition. With me today is Midshipman Chano from the United States Naval Academy, and Commander Maroon and Miss Elizabeth Wrightson, all from the Naval Academy. Really appreciate everyone chiming in today, dialing in. Really interested to hear, Sam, about your experience with the Army-Navy DeepRacer competition. But first, a couple of questions, just kind of level set kind of who you are and what degree you're getting. And so what year are you at in the Naval Academy?
So I'm a firstie here, which is our word for senior. So I'll be graduating in May of 2023.
Awesome. What kind of degree are you getting?
Computer science. Very excited.
Awesome. That is a great degree.
Commander Maroon is actually one of my professors.
Yeah. Luckily, I guess, for 2 classes too, for that matter. So it's been a joy to work with him, and his enthusiasm that he brings to this competition is actually very evident in my classes, which makes them much more lively, a lot of fun for me. So it's neat to see him kind of let his hair down with something that he really, really loves to enjoy, and the fact that it has to do with things that are in our discipline is even that much better.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm a little jealous, Commander Midshipman Chano, because I've actually gone back to school to get a CS degree. So I'm excited for you.
Yeah, it's a great major here. I think it's one of the strongest majors we have. We go over so much stuff, and the electives here are just top notch. We have a bunch of machine learning electives. We have a natural language processing elective, which is crazy, super fun. It's just a great time.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on your soon-to-be graduation. So what did you, coming back to the AWS DeepRacer Army-Navy competition, what did you think about it? This is your second year, I think, running it?
Yeah, so this is my second year running it for the machine learning team. It was a lot of fun this year. We basically did the same thing we did last year, where once we got started, we kind of grouped up into like teams within the machine learning team, and then we competed models against each other and submitted the best 2 models to the actual competition. And we had way better models this year than we did last year. People definitely learned. Like I said, we actually submitted 2 models this year instead of 1. And both of them, I think, are going to be competitive. But it's a great time. People like it. It's kind of hard to get people into machine learning if they've never done it before. But with DeepRacer, it's tangible, right? You can see, I can see how it's working, see how the car is moving, and that attracts a lot of people. Plus, it's a competition, and everyone here is competitive. So even if they say they're not, they're lying. They're competitive. So it brings a lot of people, and it's super fun.
So what's been your biggest takeaway from working with machine learning in AWS DeepRacer?
I think one of the biggest things is that machine learning isn't always intuitive. You may think on paper something's going to work, and then you implement it, and it just doesn't. You're like, this reward function seems like, this will be the best one for sure. It makes sense. If it follows this reward function, it'll totally work. And then your car's flying off, on the wall like every 2 seconds. It's just, you can't predict everything in that environment. So,
well, I'm excited to see how your models turn out on the race, especially against my beloved Army. So now, final question, which is honestly the most important question probably of our conversation, and I'm sure the answer is going to be Army. But who is going to win the Army-Navy football game?
I'm pretty sure, according to most sports betting apps, it's Navy right now. I think it's pretty hard leaning Navy, I think, because we both won a similar amount of games, but apparently Navy's bracket was harder than Army's bracket. That's what I've heard from my friends who actually really, really follow sports. So I'm pretty sure it's Navy statistically, and also I just know personally that Navy's better. So It's going to be Navy.
Well, we will agree to disagree. Midshipman Chano, really appreciate you taking the time this afternoon. Well, I guess, this afternoon. Really appreciate Commander Maroon, Ms. Wrightson, for being on, and looking forward to seeing the game and seeing how you do in the competition.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to see us win on the track and on the field. So,
yeah, thank you again so much. Really, it's been a great event. We really appreciate it. And
yeah, thank you all.
Big thanks out there to Commander Haroon, Miss Wrightson. Let me reset that. Big shout out to Commander Haroon, Miss Wrightson, and of course, Midshipman Sam Chanow, the United States Naval Academy. And now we are ready to begin the final race. The U.S. Military Academy versus the U.S. Naval Academy. Let's get a list of which two teams are actually going to be racing. Let's put that slide up there. This is going to be it. Racing first, the Black Knights, representing the United States Military Academy. Racing second with the faster qualifying time. This is the United States Naval Academy Machine Learning Team, Sierra Charlie, who we just saw interviewed there. This is Army versus Navy. This is West Point versus Annapolis. Let's get on the track. The Black Knights are already there. The pit crew is giving me a thumbs up. We are set to roll. The clock is moving. Let's race.
Well, we got to see Team Sierra Charlie as part of the wider competition a little bit earlier as well. So we have some idea of what we might expect from them. 22.632 was the best lap time the first time through. So I think if you're Black Knights right here, that's what you got to think you're going to need to beat. Of course, we saw them earlier as well. 31.242 was the time that they clocked in that first matchup that we saw. And this was the model that really struggled to keep it between the lines, unfortunately, in that first attempt. And it looks like it's carrying over here to this second run as well.
That's right. Something about this model here in the physical world is just not behaving well, whether it's an overfitting problem or whether the model just doesn't understand how the track is, or maybe wasn't trained enough. Part of the machine learning is we don't really know the answer to that without diving in much deeper into the logs and all the information. But that's kind of the fun of what we do when we train the models, is going log diving and taking the time to figure out why the model may not behave the way we expect.
Yeah, that's right. And that's unfortunately not something that really there was time to do between the first run and this run. I think they're pretty much stuck with the model that they submitted, for better or for worse. And this is not a model that appears ready to compete at the very highest level at this point. It has some good habits. Clearly, it can identify that center line because it does do its best to get there. But in terms of identifying where it's time to make the turns, just doesn't quite have that refinement at this point. That said, if that is correct, an 18.849 is a considerable improvement from what we saw out of this model on that first lap. We'll have to get clarification whether or not that is an accurate time, because if it is, that actually has got a pretty good chance, I would say, based on what we saw from Team Sierra Charlie earlier today.
That's right. So I'm still waiting for the judges to confirm whether that 18.849 is legitimate time. I am getting a head shake from the judges. That is an error in the timing. It has been corrected. 29.270. That looks more like what we would expect.
It does. Now, I guess if you're looking for the silver lining here, that is an improvement from what the Black Knights did in their first attempt today. Found just about 2 seconds, almost on the nose. So that is a nice improvement. That's a sign that the model is capable of a little bit more. It might also be a sign that our track boss was putting in a little extra hustle here in this second attempt. But that said, still, I think this is not something you're going to feel super confident in, knowing what Team Sierra Charlie has already done here in this competition.
That's right. Team Sierra Charlie right now seems to have the better car when it comes to actual track management. Here we go, trying to make sure the Black Knights might get one more lap around the track, but it has to cross the start-finish line before time reaches zero, and I am watching it go to zero before it crosses. That's it. That is the end, 29.270. Not that tough of a bar now for Sierra Charlie to cross, but they still do have to do it. Sierra Charlie was a little shaky in their on-track performance as well, so it is no guarantee.
Yeah, you're exactly right, and we talked about it already. You have your qualifying time, but you can't fall back on that. You've got to go ahead and execute now when it matters the most. And so the pressure is certainly on Sierra Charlie. They know what the mark is they need to beat, just a shade under 30 seconds. They know they can do it, so that's the good news. Again, their time from the first bit of competition, we saw them in 22.632, so there should be some wiggle room in there. We'll find out, though, very soon whether or not they're able to back it up here when it really matters, when the two academies are squaring off.
That's right. So we look at the behavior of the two vehicles, and if we look at how the Black Knights behaved, it looks like they were simply missing enough training, that they hadn't gone through enough cycles. Whereas we look at Team Sierra Charlie that went through that extensive waypoints training, and they may be a case of actually overfitting the vehicle. And we never actually got to fully explaining overfitting, but this is where the vehicle has been trained in a virtual simulator over and over to perfectly match one set of behavior, similar to how my mom used to train our dog growing up. And mom was very religious about every morning in the kitchen, the dog would teach to sit and to get the treats. The dog would know exactly how to get the treats there in the kitchen. And we had guests coming over one day, and the guests were in our living room, and mom said, "Watch this," and pointed to the dog and said, "Sit." And the dog ran to the kitchen away from everybody. And mom was like, "Well, what happened?" She goes to the kitchen. The dog's sitting in the kitchen looking at mom going, "Where's my treats?" Because the dog was overfitted. It was trained to do one behavior in one location very specifically, and in a new location, it couldn't figure out how to adapt the behavior. This is a vehicle that, while it was trained on this track configuration, it seems like now that it's here in the real world, it's trying to behave differently because it can't match up the physical to what it remembers.
Yeah, but the good news for Team Sierra Charlie is with that first lap, they did turn in a 24.6-second lap. So at this point, it's just a matter of margin of victory. They have established the faster time relative to the Black Knights. So in this head-to-head, it will be the Navy picking up the victory there. But yes, you're exactly right in what we're looking at. This is a model that has some potential. You can see it's making some good decisions, just not entirely comfortable here racing on the physical track. But with a little bit of tweaking, this is something that probably could jump up and start to challenge our top three that we saw in our race earlier today.
Absolutely. This is a great attempt, again, by the academies. Both academies are putting out some great models as they're learning and trying to adapt the total process, not just choosing the reward function, but going through the training processes, going through log evaluations, retraining the models, trying to pick out where the errors are, and then testing it here in the physical world. And it's one of the reasons I love that we are live here in DC right now, racing cars on a track to show how these models will behave when put to the test here in the physical space.
Yeah, exactly right. That is the real test, isn't it? Going from virtual to reality. And Team Sierra Charlie will get it done. Just improved, by the way, on that last lap. It was the new best of this attempt here, 23.126. That's still about half a second slower than what we saw from them in the first bit earlier, the more open competition with the 8 different teams. But still, it'll be good enough to get the job done. This will be the final lap here, and the car goes off and into the wall. But yeah, that shouldn't dampen their spirits. A great victory head-to-head against the folks from West Point.
And this actually means Navy wins the Open and Navy wins the Naval Academy versus the Military Academy. So a great win from both cases for the Navy. And it's now been asked who might win the football game later today. And it seems like everyone we interviewed said Navy. This could be auspicious. I have no dog in the hunt, but boy, it sure seems like signs are pointing that way.
Well, Navy picked up the 17-13 win 1 year ago, and that said, it has been in the last 6 years a series that Army has been the dominant team in. But I think this year, if you're making me make a pick, I'll go with the midshipmen, if for no other reason than my grandfather was in the Navy.
I love that. Well, here we go. So this is your final win for today for the U.S. Navy versus the U.S. Military Academy. Team Sierra Charlie coming out with the #1 place with 23.126 seconds over the Black Knights. Congratulations to them. And now let's give a final shout out to the winners from our Open. Ryan, tell us who they are.
Well, first of all, NRL, John Klein, congratulations. What a great performance. Came out the second developer on the track and put up that 14.841 second lap. Fended off every challenger the rest of the way for the Navy to pick up that win. Positions 2, 3, and 4, though, did belong to the Army. There you can see John, the overall winner, and then the runners-up from each of the service branches.
What a wonderful race we've had here. Ryan, any final thoughts from you as we bring this plane down?
Well, it's the third time we've been able to see Army versus Navy in the DeepRacer environment for all the reasons we've talked about throughout the course of the day today. It's such a perfect fit. The technology fits in nicely. The competition is good as well. It's a nice friendly rivalry, but one that everyone takes seriously, and I can't wait to see what the future holds.
Oh my goodness, what a great day of racing. And still, we got more football to play later today, Army versus Navy. We want to give a big shout out, of course, the Travis Manion Foundation one more time for hosting this wonderful watch party here right in the parking lot of the link. And with that, we are coming to an end. For Ryan Marine and myself, Blaine Sundred, we're here at AWS DeepRacer Studios. Thanks for watching.